This is from a 2020 article by Martin Bailey in the Art newspaper. The Zambian government is pursuing a claim first made in 1972 for the return of the famed Rhodesian man from the Natural History Museum in London. However, the UK government has refused to release key documents relating to the case. The 250,000-year-old fossilized skull was discovered in a mine in what was then Northern Rhodesia in 1921. The skull represents a Homo species that lacks some of the characteristics of extinct Neanderthals and modern mankind. Rhodesian man, Homo rhodesiensis, provides further evidence that humans came out of Africa. Instead of linear evolution, one species replacing the previous one, Africa was probably a melting pot of interbreeding human species, where Rhodesian man may have lived alongside early Homo sapiens. After the skull was discovered, the Rhodesia Broken Hill Development Company, which owned the mine, donated it to the Natural History Museum. It is one of the museum's greatest treasures, representing invaluable evidence about human evolution. In July 2019, the Art newspaper submitted a request to the National Archives for 3 pages relating to the discussions on the return of the Rhodesian man, removed from a 1973 file, to be opened up under the Freedom of Information Act. It seems surprising that 47-year-old papers relating to the 1921 discovery of a 250,000-year-old skull should be quite so sensitive. These 3 pages took officials nearly 6 months to review, but the Foreign and Commonwealth Office finally refused to release the papers in February, concluding that it would harm UK relations with Zambia and would be detrimental to the operation of government and not in the UK's interest. A Natural History Museum spokeswoman told the Art newspaper that discussions are ongoing with the Zambian government about the future of the skull. When asked whether a loan or permanent return is subject of talks, she said that the museum is open to discussion on all issues of interest to the Zambian government. Restitution claims for objects taken from colonial Africa now represent a very live international issue for European and North American museums, although nearly all relate to indigenous objects made within the past few centuries, such as the Benin bronzes. What is unusual about the Zambian case is that it concerns a natural object that is prehistoric. Northern Rhodesia achieved independence as Zambia in 1964, and the return of Rhodesian man was first requested in 1972, with contacts continuing for a decade or so. The request was raised again in 2016 at a UNESCO meeting in Paris, with further UNESCO discussions in 2018 and since then. John Jackson, the Natural History Museum's head of science policy, told UNESCO 2 years ago that the UK, both at government and museum level, strongly believes that there is significant room for progress in bilateral negotiations with Zambia, and a need for closer discussion than the 2 member states have had in the past. Since then, progress has been slow. Meanwhile, Rhodesian man continues to be a key object on display in the museum's Human Evolution Gallery. Extensive Foreign and Commonwealth Office files provide an insight into what has gone on behind the scenes over the original claim. In 1972, the Zambian Foreign Ministry wrote to the UK High Commission in Lusaka, arguing that the skull was vital to the history of Zambia, and its return was requested. The UK's main argument against the claim was that the museum was legally unable to deaccession. Under a 1963 law, the museum can only deaccession duplicates, items unfit for use, or post-1850 printed material. It is also said the skull is normally on display and accessible for serious scientific research. Despite the deaccessioning hurdle, one Foreign Office official internally floated the naive idea of swapping the skull for something of similar interest, which the Zambians might offer. No Zambian museum has anything even remotely approaching the importance of the skull. In 1978, the Zambian ambassador wrote that a solution ought to be found to resolve this problem, which has inhibited cooperation in many other fields. The dispute rumbled on, and 4 years later, a Foreign Office official argued in a memo that the return of the skull would set an evil precedent, opening the floodgates for claims of vast quantities of cultural or scientific property held in British collections.